there's something toxic, let's say, about masculinity per se, what that will inevitably mean is that as women...
Jordan Peterson has spent years teaching the world how to stand tall in the face of suffering, but recently, the Antidote to Chaos author has been forced to face a level of physical devastation that few could survive. After a series of mysterious health setbacks and a terrifying period of silence, he has finally come forward to reveal a new diagnosis, one that explains the shocking changes in his appearance and the grueling battle he's been fighting behind closed doors. Join us as we uncover the details of this heartbreaking update and what it means for his future. Frozen beginnings. Jordan Peterson grew up far from the spotlight, in the small town of Fairview, Alberta. Life there was quiet and often harsh, especially during long winters. It was not the kind of place people expected big ideas to come from, but it gave him something important: time to think and space to question. His home played a big role in shaping who he became. His father was a schoolteacher, and his mother worked as a librarian. They were not wealthy, but they cared deeply about learning. Books were always around, and curiosity was encouraged. This kind of environment helped him develop a habit of asking questions early in life. A key turning point came through a local librarian, Sandy Notley. She introduced him to books that most teenagers never read. These were not simple or comforting stories. They were serious works that explored power, control, and human suffering. Writers like George Orwell, Aldous Huxley, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and Ayn Rand deeply influenced him. Reading these authors changed how he saw the world. He began to wonder why societies fall into chaos, why people follow harmful ideas, and how ordinary individuals can become part of something destructive. These were not easy questions, but they stayed with him. By the time he was a teenager, Peterson was already thinking about suffering, belief systems, and human behavior in ways that most people only consider much later in life. And this was just the beginning of questions that would soon push him far beyond his small hometown. Searching for answers. As a young man, Jordan Peterson was not just reading about the world, he wanted to change it. Like many thoughtful and idealistic students, he believed that the right political system could improve people's lives. This belief led him to become involved with the New Democratic Party, a group that focused on social justice and equality. At first, this felt like the right path. It gave him a sense of direction and purpose. But over time, something started to bother him. The more he read about history and political systems, the more he noticed a pattern. Many ideologies promised fairness and progress, yet often led to control, suffering, and even violence. This made him question whether the problem was really about choosing the right system. By the age of 18, Peterson made a difficult decision. He stepped away from politics, not because he stopped caring, but because he realized that his questions were deeper than politics could answer. He wanted to understand why people believe in certain ideas so strongly, even when those ideas cause harm. He continued his education at the University of Alberta, where he first studied political science. This gave him a clearer view of how governments and systems work. However, it also confirmed something important for him. Political science could describe systems, but it did not fully explain human behavior. It did not answer why individuals support harmful ideologies or how belief systems take control of societies. This realization led him to make a major shift. He returned to the same university to study psychology. For Peterson, this was not just a change of subject. It was a move toward understanding people at a deeper level. He wanted to explore how the human mind works, how people make decisions, and why they act the way they do. His interest in these questions eventually took him to McGill University, where he pursued a doctorate in clinical psychology. There, He worked under experienced researchers and focused on serious topics like addiction, aggression, and personality. His doctoral research looked at what makes some people more likely to develop problems like alcoholism. He studied patterns in behavior and tried to understand what drives people toward destructive habits. This work was important because it moved beyond simple explanations. Instead of blaming society or individuals alone, Peterson examined the complex interaction between biology, environment, and personal choices. He was trying to build a clearer picture of human nature, one that could explain both good and bad behavior. By the time he completed his PhD, Peterson had developed a strong foundation in understanding the human mind. He was no longer just asking political questions. He was asking psychological questions about belief, responsibility, and the darker sides of human behavior. And soon, these questions would take him into some of the most influential institutions in the world. Academic ascension. After completing his doctorate, Jordan Peterson stepped into one of the most respected academic environments in the world, Harvard University. From 1993 to 1998, he taught and conducted research there, building a strong reputation as a serious and dedicated scholar. At Harvard, his work focused on understanding personality, belief systems, and what drives human behavior. He studied why people act the way they do, especially in situations involving stress, conflict, or uncertainty. He was deeply interested in how beliefs shape actions and how those actions can either improve a person's life or lead to negative outcomes. His students often described him as intense, but highly engaging, someone who made complex ideas feel important and real. During this time, Peterson was not a public figure. He was focused on research, teaching, and developing his ideas. He published academic papers and worked closely with students, helping them think more carefully about their own beliefs and decisions. His approach was not just about sharing information, it was about encouraging people to take responsibility for how they understood the world. In 1998, he returned to Canada and joined the University of Toronto. Alongside teaching, he began working as a clinical psychologist, seeing around 20 patients each week. This practical experience added another layer to his understanding. He was no longer only studying behavior in theory. He was working directly with people facing real struggles like anxiety, depression, and personal crises. Around this time, Peterson also began developing a unique lecture style. He combined psychology with mythology, religion, and philosophy to explore how humans create meaning in their lives. His lectures were detailed and thoughtful, often challenging students to think deeply about responsibility, purpose, and suffering. All of these ideas came together in his first book, Maps of Meaning: The Architecture of Belief, published in 1999. It took him 13 years to complete. The book explored how people understand the world through stories, beliefs, and symbols, and how these shape their actions. At the time, the book did not gain wide attention, but it marked the completion of a long intellectual journey. What he didn't know yet was that his quiet academic life was about to change in a way no one could have predicted. Viral defiance. In 2016, Jordan Peterson made a decision that would change his life completely. Until then, he had been known mainly within academic circles. That changed when he uploaded a series of YouTube videos speaking out against a proposed Canadian law called Bill C-16. The law aimed to add gender identity and expression as protected categories under the Canadian Human Rights Act. While many supported it as a step toward inclusion, Peterson focused on one specific concern. He argued that the law could lead to compelled speech, meaning people might be legally required to use certain pronouns. For him, this was not just a small policy issue. He believed it raised serious questions about freedom of expression and individual rights. In his videos, Peterson spoke clearly and directly. He said that forcing people to use specific language, even with good intentions, could open the door to broader forms of control. His message was simple but strong. In a free society, speech should not be legally enforced. These views quickly gained attention online. The reaction was immediate and intense. The University of Toronto, where he was teaching, faced pressure to respond. Some students and faculty strongly disagreed with him and organized protests. Activists challenged him during public appearances, and many journalists criticized his stance in articles and interviews. He was labeled in very different ways depending on who was speaking. Some saw him as defending free speech, while others believed he was opposing social progress. Despite the criticism, or perhaps because of it, his popularity grew rapidly. His videos reached hundreds of thousands, then millions of viewers. People from around the world began following his lectures and interviews. Many said they felt he was expressing concerns they had not heard clearly stated before. At the same time, the public conversation around him became deeply divided. Supporters described him as brave and honest. Critics described him as harmful and controversial. He became a symbol in a much larger debate about language, rights, and cultural change. Almost overnight, Peterson went from a professor to a global public figure, standing at the center of a growing cultural conflict. And this sudden rise would soon bring a level of pressure few people are prepared to handle. Relentless expansion. After his sudden rise in 2016, Jordan Peterson entered a phase of life that moved faster than anything he had experienced before. The demand for his ideas grew quickly and did not slow down. He was invited to speak at universities, conferences, and large public events across different countries. His schedule is filled with interviews, long-form podcast discussions, and public debates with journalists and academics. In 2018, he published 12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos. The book was written in a clear and practical style, making complex ideas easier for a wide audience to understand. It focused on responsibility, discipline, and finding meaning in life. The response was massive. The book sold millions of copies worldwide and stayed on bestseller lists for a long time. This success pushed Peterson even further into the global spotlight. With this growing attention came an intense and demanding routine. He was traveling constantly, sometimes moving between cities and countries within days. He continued doing interviews, recording content, and managing a growing online presence. At the same time, he was still involved in academic work and clinical thinking. There was very little time for rest or recovery. From the outside, it looked like he was managing everything well. He spoke confidently, answered questions with clarity, and maintained a strong public presence. But underneath, the pressure was building. The constant attention, combined with the responsibility he felt toward his audience, began to take a toll. His body and mind were under continuous strain. During this period, Peterson also made major changes to his lifestyle, especially his diet. He began following a very restrictive eating plan, eventually limiting himself almost entirely to meat. He believed this helped manage certain health issues, including inflammation and mood-related symptoms. While it may have provided some relief, it also created distance between him and normal social routines, such as shared meals and everyday interactions. This combination of factors, non-stop work, high expectations, and an unusual lifestyle led to increasing isolation. Even though he was constantly surrounded by people, the experience was not the same as having time for personal connection or rest. The gap between his public image and private reality continued to grow. By this point, Peterson was carrying more than just a busy schedule. He was carrying emotional, physical, and psychological weight that few could fully see. And soon, that hidden pressure would begin to show in ways no one expected. Hidden pressures. At the height of his public success, Jordan Peterson was facing a deeply personal crisis that most people could not see. In 2019, his wife, Tammy Peterson, was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of kidney cancer known as Bellini duct carcinoma. The diagnosis was serious and came with a very uncertain outlook. It immediately shifted the focus of his life from public debates and lectures to the possibility of losing someone close to him. This situation created a heavy emotional burden. Peterson was already managing a demanding global schedule, but now he was also dealing with fear, stress, and the need to support his family. Balancing both roles became extremely difficult. While he continued to appear in public, speak at events, and engage with audiences, there was a constant private struggle happening at the same time. During this period, his own health also began to decline. He experienced increasing levels of anxiety and physical discomfort. The pressure from work, combined with the emotional strain of his wife's illness, started affecting his ability to function normally. Sleep became difficult, and his overall mental state became more unstable. To manage these symptoms, Peterson was prescribed clonazepam, a drug commonly used to treat anxiety and related conditions. At first, the medication seemed helpful. It reduced some of the immediate symptoms and allowed him to continue working through a very challenging time. However, benzodiazepines come with risks, especially when used over a longer period. Dependence can develop slowly, often without clear warning signs. In Peterson's case, this process was gradual. The medication that was meant to stabilize his condition began to affect his nervous system in deeper ways. As time went on, he started experiencing increased sensitivity, difficulty managing stress, and signs of neurological imbalance. These changes were not obvious at first, but they became more serious over time. The situation was complicated further by the fact that he was still maintaining a demanding public life, leaving little room to fully address his health. What began as a reasonable medical treatment slowly turned into a much more complex and dangerous situation, one that would soon escalate beyond anyone's expectations. And before long, everything he had been holding together would begin to fall apart. Collapse and coma. By 2019, the situation for Jordan Peterson had become critical. What started as a prescribed use of clonazepam had developed into a serious physical dependence. Benzodiazepines directly affect the nervous system, and with continued use, the body can begin to rely on them just to maintain a sense of normal balance. What was initially meant to help manage anxiety had slowly become something his body could not function without. When Peterson tried to reduce or stop the medication, his body reacted strongly. Withdrawal from benzodiazepines is widely known to be extremely difficult and, in some cases, dangerous. In his situation, it led to severe neurological distress. He experienced intense anxiety, physical instability, and overwhelming symptoms that made even basic daily functioning nearly impossible. His condition went beyond discomfort. It became a full body and mental crisis that was difficult to control through standard methods. Doctors in North America attempted to manage his withdrawal, but the results were not what his family had hoped for. His symptoms continued to worsen, and the situation became more urgent. As a result, his family decided to seek alternative treatment outside the country. They traveled to Russia, where doctors proposed a more aggressive and unconventional approach, a medically induced coma. The purpose of this procedure was to allow his body to go through the withdrawal process without the full conscious experience of the pain and distress. It was not a common treatment and carried significant risks, but given how severe his condition had become, it was seen as a necessary option. The decision reflected how serious and urgent the situation was at that point. During this period, Peterson also developed pneumonia, which added another major complication. His body was already under extreme stress from withdrawal, and now it had to fight a serious infection at the same time. This made the entire recovery process even more difficult and increased the risks involved. After the coma, he was placed in intensive care, where doctors closely monitored his condition. The recovery was slow and required constant medical attention. One of the most challenging outcomes was the loss of motor function. He struggled with coordination and movement, and actions that were once simple became difficult and required support. Rehabilitation took months, and progress was gradual. Each small improvement required effort and patience. The focus of his life shifted completely, from managing a global career to rebuilding basic physical abilities and stabilizing his health. The man who once handled intense schedules, long lectures, and high-pressure debates was now working step by step to regain control over his own body. And just as he began to recover, another unexpected challenge was already waiting. Fragile return. In 2020, Jordan Peterson slowly returned to the public eye after a prolonged and haunting silence. When he finally reappeared, the transformation was visceral. He appeared noticeably thinner and more fragile, moving with a newfound caution that bordered on hesitancy. His voice, once known for its sharp, professorial cadence, had softened into a rasp, and the restless intensity that had defined his rise to fame seemed dampened by exhaustion. It was immediately evident to his global audience that he had endured an ordeal that had fundamentally reshaped both his physical form and his psychological landscape. This return was neither a triumphant roar nor a scripted media blitz. It was a quiet, gradual reemergence. In a series of candid recorded conversations with his daughter, Michaela, Peterson spoke with startling vulnerability about his struggle with benzodiazepine dependence and the harrowing medical journey that followed, including an induced coma in Russia. While he expressed gratitude for his survival, the visible strain of his recovery suggested that the path back to normalcy remained steep. The simple act of holding a conversation appeared to require a monumental exertion of will. Amidst this personal darkness, a parallel drama unfolded within his family that bordered on the miraculous. His wife, Tammy Peterson, had been diagnosed with Bellini duct carcinoma, a rare and aggressive form of kidney cancer with a dismal prognosis. However, as Jordan struggled to regain his footing, Tammy's health began to improve in ways that defied her initial medical outlook. This unexpected recovery provided a crucial emotional anchor for the family after a year defined by the looming shadow of mortality. By 2021, Peterson's intellectual output reflected this season of suffering. He published Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life, a sequel that felt markedly different from his previous work. While his first book championed the necessity of structure, Beyond Order explored the dangers of becoming too rigid and the need to find meaning within chaos. The prose was infused with a more personal, somber tone, suggesting that his recent brushes with death had moved his philosophy from the realm of academic theory into the crucible of lived experience. This period of reflection prompted a definitive break from his past. Peterson officially resigned from his tenured position at the University of Toronto, signaling the end of a multi-decade academic career. He transitioned into a new, more independent phase of his professional life, joining the media platform Daily Wire Plus and conceptualizing the Peterson Academy, an online educational initiative designed to bypass traditional institutional gatekeepers. Step by step, Peterson seemed to be rebuilding his life on a new foundation, trading the lecture halls of Toronto for a massive, digital-first empire. He was reclaiming his influence and finding a sustainable pace. However, just as he appeared to have reached a plateau of stability and renewed purpose, another unexpected crisis was lurking on the horizon, ready to test his resilience once more. Invisible threat. In 2025, just as life seemed to be settling again for Jordan Peterson, another serious health crisis began in a very ordinary setting. While helping clean his father-in-law's house after a family loss, he was exposed to mold. It was not something obvious or immediately alarming, but the environment contained harmful toxins that can affect the body in severe ways, especially when exposure is prolonged. Soon after, his health began to decline. What started as general discomfort quickly turned into something much more serious. Doctors eventually diagnosed him with chronic inflammatory response syndrome, often called CIRS. This condition occurs when the immune system reacts abnormally to toxins, staying active instead of calming down after the threat is gone. In Peterson's case, his immune system began to malfunction. Instead of protecting his body in a balanced way, it triggered widespread inflammation. This affected multiple systems in his body, including his lungs, brain, and nervous system. The symptoms were intense and difficult to control, especially given his previous health challenges. As the condition worsened, it led to pneumonia, a serious lung infection. Because his body was already under stress from inflammation, it struggled to fight the infection effectively. The situation became even more dangerous when it progressed into sepsis, a life-threatening condition where infection spreads into the bloodstream and affects the entire body. At this point, Peterson had to be rushed to the hospital and placed in intensive care. He remained there for an extended period as doctors worked to stabilize him. During his time in the ICU, additional complications appeared. He developed polyneuropathy, a condition that affects the nerves and can lead to weakness, poor coordination, and difficulty with movement. This meant that, once again, his ability to control his own body was affected. Tasks that were once simple became difficult. Recovery was not just about treating the infection. It also involved managing long-term neurological damage. The situation was serious and uncertain, and it marked one of the most dangerous points in his entire health journey. And even after leaving the hospital, the real challenge of recovery was only just beginning. Silent recovery. After months of intense medical care, Jordan Peterson finally reached a point where he could leave the hospital. But leaving did not mean he was fully recovered. His time in intensive care had been long and uncertain, and even when his condition stabilized, doctors could not give a clear timeline for full recovery. The effects of chronic inflammatory response syndrome and related complications were still present, and they required careful, ongoing management. Returning home marked a new phase. Instead of hospital rooms and constant monitoring, he was now in a more familiar space. However, the challenges did not disappear. He continued to deal with neurological issues caused by polyneuropathy. This affected his movement, coordination, and overall physical strength. Simple actions could take more time and effort than before, and some abilities did not return quickly. His recovery process was not steady or predictable. There were days when he felt stronger and more capable, followed by days when symptoms became more noticeable again. This kind of pattern made it difficult to measure progress in a clear way. It required patience and careful attention to his health. During this time, family support became essential. His wife, Tammy Peterson, along with his children, played a central role in his daily life. They helped manage routines, supported his treatment, and ensured that he was not facing the situation alone. Their presence provided stability during a period that could have easily felt isolating. Life also slowed down in a significant way. The fast-paced schedule of travel, public speaking, and constant engagement was no longer possible. Instead, his days became more focused on recovery, rest, and small improvements. This shift required adjustment, especially for someone who had spent years working at a very high level of intensity. One of the most difficult parts of this stage was the realization that not everything could be controlled through effort or discipline. Peterson had spent much of his life encouraging responsibility and personal strength. But now he was facing a situation where physical limits could not be pushed aside by will alone. His body was recovering on its own terms, and that required acceptance as much as effort. This period became less about public influence and more about private endurance. It was a quieter phase, but also a deeply real one, where progress came slowly and required consistent support. Jordan Peterson's journey from a small-town thinker to a global icon is a testament to the power of ideas and the fragility of the human condition. Having survived harrowing medical crises and personal loss, he continues to rebuild his life through independent media and education. His story remains a raw example of his own philosophy: finding meaning within chaos. Does Peterson's personal struggle change how you view his message? Let us know below. Like and subscribe for more such videos.